Hey guys, welcome back to RPO Restorations. In today's video, I decided to talk about another car line that you used to see all over the place and now has kind of faded away. They were mainly throwaway cars for many people. Cheap, reliable transportation that, depending on the particular model, looked good or had a little performance. This line was also the last body platform to be engineered by Oldsmobile. This body line includes the Buick Somerset and Skylark, the Oldsmobile Calais and Achieva, and the Pontiac Grand Am. This line is the GM N Body. The N Body lineup debuted for the 1985 model year with offerings from Buick, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac. Its use was limited to these divisions because there would have been too much overlap in Chevrolet with the L Body Corsica and Beretta. I also read an interesting article while doing some research for this video that claimed that the body line was originally intended to be a replacement for the mid-size A-body lineup, think today's G-bodies, when it was still in its early design stage. Changes in GM's upper management, however, put this plan to a stop, and production of the mid-size body-on-frame cars continued, with the N lineup becoming its own thing. Hence the sort of odd naming conventions with the early cars. I don't know how much of this is true, but it certainly makes sense. Anyway, the N-Body platform arrived with a 103.4-inch wheelbase in its 1985 coupe form, and powertrains were uniform across all car lines, with a 2.5-liter Iron Duke 4-cylinder standard or a 3-liter V6 as an option. Buyers could also get a 5-speed manual transmission or an optional 3-speed turbo hydromatic 125C automatic. Styling included a very formal for a compact roofline with a fully vertical rear window. This was in the heyday of GM corporate engineering, so from a distance, most of the cars looked the same. Now let's take a look at some of the individual offerings now. First, from Buick, we have the Regal Somerset. This car seems to be the intended replacement for the X-Body Skylark, but because of the 1-year overlap between the two, was named the Regal Somerset. Somerset being a previously offered trim option on the midsize Regal. All N-Bodies debuted as coupes in their first year, with the 4-door N-Body Skylark arriving in 1986. This 2-door, 4-door naming convention would continue until the 1988 model year, when the Skylark name was fully adopted. The Somerset debuted with rather bland styling for the time, as I suspect it was geared towards older buyers. It did, however, have a pretty interesting pod-style interior for the driver's controls, which sort of made it a little ahead of its time for Buick. Sort of reminiscent of the Camaro Berlinetta model. There was one bright spot, however. Buick extended the offering of their T-Type package to this car for most of its run, making it a little more interesting looking. The blacked out trim and wheels really added a lot in my opinion, if it really wasn't much more than a suspension and appearance package. By 1988, Buick had dropped the Somerset name from the coupe, and from then on the car was known as the Skylark. In 1992, the N-Bodies were all given a cosmetic refresh. GM made a fairly good attempt at making each division's car look different. The Skylark was given a rather unconventional looking front end and received sheet metal and interior changes. I'm not a big fan of this model Skylark, as I think they turned the Somerset, which they could have done a lot more with, into a pretty bland car. The car received some powertrain upgrades along the way too, with the 2.5-liter Iron Duke being replaced with the Quad 4 in both single and dual overhead cam versions, depending on the year. The V6 would also see several changes along the way. Skylark production would continue until 1998, with almost 1 million being produced during its 13-year run. The next N-Body we're going to talk about is the Oldsmobile Calais, Oldsmobile's replacement for the Omega. This is probably my favorite N-Body, even if it wasn't as prevalent as its other cousins. It was portrayed as a sportier Olds aimed at younger buyers. Debuting in 1985 in coupe form, along with a sedan in 1986, it would be offered in several models, including a base, Supreme, ES, and GT, depending on the year. It was initially offered with the 2.5-liter Iron Duke or 3-liter V6. The Calais would really begin to shine in 1988, however, with its name changed to the Cutlass Calais and with the replacement of the Iron Duke with Oldsmobile's new Quad 4 engine. This is also the first year of the Calais GT model. Featuring special front and rear fascias, rocker panel extensions, special seats and exhaust tips, the car really looked good. Another highlight was the introduction of the International Series to the Calais line. This included the high-output Quad 4 motor, FE3 sport suspension, and some upgraded interior components. Starting in 1990, the Calais hit its peak with the introduction of the Quad 442 model. Including most of the exterior options from the GT model, this added the high-output Quad 4 engine pushing out 180 horsepower, or the W42 Quad 4 rated at 190 horsepower. This was a very unique package for a small car from a domestic manufacturer at the time. Following the 1991 model year, the Cutlass Calais name would be retired and the model would be reintroduced as the Oldsmobile Achieva, along with sheet metal upgrades to make the car more unique to its brand. Debuting for the 1992 model year, the Achieva was offered in coupe and sedan with 4 trim levels: the base S, the SL, and the coupe-only SC and SCX. Except for the SCX models, the Achieva is generally a forgettable car. While I do appreciate everything GM put out at this time, I think the Achieva just never really got people excited, save for the SCX. Speaking of the SCX, that was a pretty interesting offering from Oldsmobile. Essentially a continuation of the W41 Calais, it featured the high-output Quad 4 engine. It also came equipped with a body kit, 140 mph speedometer, and a computer-controlled adjustable suspension. The Achieva would continue to be produced up until the 1998 model year, until it was replaced by the Alero. Now it's time to talk about the best seller of the N Bidy lineup, the Pontiac Grand Am. Replacing the X Body Phoenix for the 1985 model year, the Grand Am was a name that Pontiac had used twice previously on its midsize offerings, from 1973 to 1975, and again from 1978 to 80. Initially available in base or LE trim, 1986 would see the addition of a sedan and the SE trim option. The first few years of the Grand Am also featured a rather unique digital dash in the base or LE models, with the SE receiving analog gauges. By 1987, the car was offered with turbocharged 2-liter engine. By 1989, the turbo was replaced with Oldsmobile's Quad 4, along with a new front and rear fascia for the car. In 1992, with the refresh of the N line, the Grand Am received all new sheet metal and assumed a wider track. A GT trim package was also added. The Grand Am would go on to receive additional updates throughout the 90s until the N Body was retired after the 1998 model year. The Grand Am name would continue on, however, until 2005. The Grand Am would be the most successful car of the N line, with Pontiac selling an average of about 200,000 a year throughout its run. Some years it would make up about a quarter of all Pontiacs sold. Overall, I think the N line was a mixed bag for General Motors. While they sold well for Pontiac, they struggled with Oldsmobile. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Oldsmobile buyers weren't really interested in a compact car, and they never really knew how to market the Calais. Pontiac buyers loved them, and the Grand Am was definitely everywhere in the 90s. What do you guys think? Did you ever own one or work on one? Let us know in the comments section. Thanks for watching.